Today I want to talk about tetras. It's got to be one of the most common ornamental fish in the fish keeping hobby today. Size, shape, color. I'm going to go over my 10 favorite tetras.
So come along with me, it's SuzyQue. Hey.
There are 150 different species of tetras, so I'm sure there's a tetra out there for you. I'm going to go over my top 10 favorite tetras in the fish keeping hobby. And most of these I have. One of them is on my bucket list. Tetras look amazing in heavily planted tanks. They're mid to top swimmers. Many of them are really good community fish. So just because tetra's a good community fish doesn't mean the other fish in the community aren't going to want to predate on that tetra. And I like a heavily planted tank with my tetras for a couple different reasons. One, I like that to give them a hiding spot. Lots of plants, lots of hiding spots. Another reason is they look amazing against the green. Where do you see some of these tetras coming up? I think they're absolutely gorgeous. And the plants also give them a little bit of shelter from the light when they don't want to be in bright light. It's a win-win relationship between the plants and the tetras. But they don't have to be live plants. You can also use plastic plants if you want, or other decor. I'm going to go over small tetras that are good for a 10-gallon aquarium, as well as larger tetras for your 10, 20, 30, and 40-gallon on up aquariums. Tetras, though, are egg layers. So you could either want those plants, or spawning them up, or just let nature do its course, because the tetras will predate on their eggs and their fry. And I like using a spawning mop or floating plants, so if there's eggs in there, I could just remove the eggs along with those plants and put them in a nursery tank and let the community be on its way, and I can raise up the fry. So let me start the countdown. Well, actually it's a count up. I'm going to start with number 10 and work my way to my favorite. Number 10 on my list was also my very first tetra I ever got, one of the first fish I bought for my 50-gallon community tank, and that was the red-eye tetra. And how stunning, with the red eyes from across the room with the silvery body. And it comes from the rivers of West Brazil and East Peru and East Bolivia, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's got the band around the tail, the yellowish and black band around the tail. And it's a fish that pops from the other side of the room when you come in. This gets to be about 3 inches, so I wouldn't put it in anything less than a 30-gallon. But that is the number 10 pick, the red-eye tetra. Underrated too, I might add. My number 9 pick is the Buenos Aires tetra. Wow, this tetra is absolutely stunning. This one also gets to be about 2.5 to 2.8 inches. So minimum 30-gallon aquarium, maybe a 20-gallon long because it's got the 30 inches of swim room. It's got the silver body with the olive and blackish brown. The anal and dorsal fins can be yellowish or reddish. Now this one isn't as peaceful as the red-eye tetra. It is beautiful, but you're going to want to match it up with someone who's got a little bit more edge to it. It can hold its own, let me tell you. It can hold its own. He was in my tank with my juvenile severums, and now he's in this 55, and this 55-gallon is my next project. So it will be heavily planted. Right now it's heavily algaed. But that is my Buenos Aires tetra, my number 9 pick. My number 8 pick, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't have this on my list, because I have it in my fish room. I've had it ever since I've had a fish room, the Glow Light tetra. This is a much smaller tetra that only gets about 2 inches and would do very well in a 10 to 15-gallon. Of course, the bigger is always better. Didn't say it. But this is a tetra that pops from across the room. It's not really a shy fish, but it doesn't like the bright light. So plenty of plants and hiding spots for it to get away from the bright lights would be great. It's got a long orange, it's got an orange streak across its whole body that almost seems to glow in the dark, hence the Glow Light tetra name. Very peaceful, small fish. My number 7 fish, which 7 is my favorite number, happens to be a tetra that is on my bucket list. I have never owned this fish. I've always wanted this fish. This is bright yellow lemon tetra. And after all, who doesn't love a yellow fish, right? Not only that, it's got the beautiful red eye, just like the red-eye tetra, but this is a beautiful yellow fish that will pop in your planted aquarium. Actually, they like the water a little more acidic. So if you were going to make a biotope with your branches and your leaf litter, this lemon tetra would be a perfect candidate. It gets to about 2.5 to 2.8 inches. So it'd be good in a 15, 20 gallon biotope. And this one is from South America with a lifespan of about 4 to 5 years. So I know this is on my bucket list. Do you have a tetra that you've always wanted or that you really want but can't seem to find? Huh. We are reminded by Sophie that if you like this kind of content, go ahead and hit the notification bell so you're told of the next time I put out a video. Thank you, Sophie, for the reminder. And that is my number 7 tetra. And I will have the lemon tetra someday. The number 6 tetra on my list is the red blue Colombian tetra. Absolutely gorgeous, rainbowish color. This is almost more of a roundish body. Now this gets about 2.5 inches, so a 20 gallon, specifically a 20 gallon long would be really good. It's a little more of a rounder body than the other tetras we've been talking about. Absolutely beautiful with the fins are all tipped in red and orange with the body of a shimmery, translucent, rainbowish color. Absolutely beautiful. This tetra I would consider a little more on the aggressive side. So if you want to put them with your angelfish, and that is my number 6, the red blue Colombian tetra. Number 5 pick is one of the smaller ones, the Ember tetra. I have always had the Ember tetra, love the Ember tetra. The males and females, you can sex them pretty easily by how reddish they are versus the bigger, paler and fatter bodied of the female. These only get like an inch big, so this would be a perfect candidate if you have that 10 gallon aquarium. This would be a 7 or 8 of them in a 10 gallon aquarium with maybe a centerpiece fish would be beautiful because these are peaceful fish. And the red against the green plants, absolutely breathtaking. They only live 2 to 4 years. They only live about 2 to 4 years, and they're smaller. So I try not to keep them in any of my aquariums that have a high flow because they're so small. I hate to see them getting like tossed around, you know. If you've ever owned an Ember tetra, a school of Ember tetra, you know what I'm talking about. The Ember tetra is absolutely on my list. And while we're on the smaller side, let me talk about my number 4 pick. This is one of the most common tetras, I think, in the hobby is the neon tetra. This is beautiful. I have this in my 16 gallon orb, and these fish look amazing from across the room. I have them in there with some, I think it's Creeping Charlie and some Anubias plants. Just a little bit of greenery going on with a sponge filter in it. And from the other side of the room, I can see them swimming in circles. Absolutely beautiful. They stay a little over an inch and a half. So 10 gallon on up would be perfect for the neon tetra. It's peaceful and they live a good long time. They live between 8 and 10 years. So well worth getting a dozen or so tetras for that community tank you have. The blue line extends from its eyes to the adipose fin, and the red line stretches from the center of the body all the way to the caudal fin. My list would not be complete without my number 4 neon tetra. We're getting to the top. The number 3 tetra on my list is a tetra of many names. And I had a very hard time identifying it. I'm going to call it the Conchu Blue tetra. But these are in my biotope. These have almost a royal blue purplish body with tiny white tips on them. And let me tell you, at night when the lights are off and I shine a flashlight in the biotope, they are spectacular. I can't capture it on film, but I can capture it in my mind. Because they're a little bit of a fin nipper. So I've got to make sure whatever I put them in with, they're going to be, I'm going to say they're a little bit more aggressive. They do well in this tank with the snails that I have in here. They live between 3 and 4 years. I have them in my biotope. From South America, the Amazon River basins. It's absolutely beautiful. And because they get about 1.5 inches, I would keep them in a 20-gallon minimum on up. And this is my number 3 pick. It sits in my kitchen, and I get to admire them all the time. My number 2 fish. I struggle with this fish. I love this fish. It's number 2 on my list. I can't seem to keep them alive. So if you have the trick or the answer, please let me know, because I love this tetra, the rummy nose tetra. And they have this beautiful red face that's a pretty good indicator. As long as you have pristine water, it'll stay bright red. The tail fin is a black and white stripe. And these rummy nose, they get to about 2.5 inches, so I wouldn't put them anything less than a 30. I had mine in a heavily planted 55-gallon. They did very well until the water change. So I don't think they like change very much. I know when any time I had to move them from one tank to another, it didn't do well. Or if I did too large of a water change, they didn't do well. So I'm going to say from my experience, they like more frequent, smaller water changes. And their face and their nose is a pretty good indicator on how your water is. But you don't want that to be your indicator. You want to catch it before the rummy nose tells you. This is a very peaceful fish. And I'm definitely going to master taking care of these fish. I just might need some tips. But that's my number 2 because I just think they are breathtaking. But there is one tetra that is on the very top of my list. I just did a whole video on them, and that is the Congo tetra. And it's very easy to sex these because the males are very more pronounced with the white outline of their whole body. They look like swimming rainbows. They get up to 3 inches, so you don't want to go anything less than a 30-gallon. Anything less than a 30-gallon. They're generally peaceful. They come from the Congo River, hence the name Congo tetra. And their lifespan is 3 to 5 years. Just look at the coloration on this body. It is absolutely, it's blue-green hue with translucent fins outlined in that white. And they shoal together so nicely. So these guys like it also. These tetras also like it a little more acidic. So if you wanted to put some, if they were going to start spawning, and you wanted to have that, I'd put some peat moss on the ground to catch the eggs, or peat moss in the filter maybe to make your water just a little bit more acidic, or put together that biotope for these amazing Congo tetras. I just did a video on these. I'll put that link up here because they were in my heavily planted, heavily algaed 40-gallon breeder. They are a beautiful, peaceful, amazing tetra. Those are my top 10 tetras. So you could have your own top 10 tetras, and I'd love to hear them because there's over 150 species of these beautiful, ornamental, gorgeous fish that most of them are do very well in community tanks. So thanks for coming along and checking out my top 10 tetras. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, everybody, it's SuzyQue. Hey, everybody, it's SuzyQue. Nah, hey, everybody, it's SuzyQue. So come along with me. Said I'm SuzyQue.